Welcome back to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. So, we are going to carry on with our slightly more weird and wonderful stuff. We had a little bit of a break and did sing on some Arms and Armour because it was asked for and because it was amusing. And I think it went very well. Desigan, welcome. And we're now going back to our regular. Hey, Jellybean. But as we progress with this, one of the things which I often wonder when it comes to things like mythology of any kind is really and truly how much truth or reality is in it. And having said that, is it just there for like teaching you something, to tell you some moral type thing, or is it actually in some way genuine history that is remembered and then encoded into a story, but in some way actually did happen? And of course mythology has all kinds of things to tell you all about. Spooky, welcome back. So, in terms of mythology, I remember growing up, one of my absolute favorites was all the Greek mythology, which means we're going to actually start off our stories with looking at a couple of ideas that come from the Greek, simply because, well, they were always my favorites. And one of my favorite stories actually was not the more well-known ones, but rather the epic voyage of the Argonauts. And I always thought it would be really, really cool if it was real. And I remember that there was an archaeological discovery where they speculated, at the very least, that it could have in some way shown that the tale of the Argonauts may well have in some way been based in a certain amount of truth. Spookies, yes, I am on a little early. It was a long day, so I thought I'd start 15 minutes early and maybe end a little earlier as well. It's been a busy out and about day and very, very enjoyable, but it did involve a rather epic dinner. One of our friends has been nagging the boyfriend of one of our daughters, because he is Portuguese, to actually make a proper Portuguese meal for them. So we went over to their place and he did indeed do so, and he made one of my absolute favorites, which is feijoada. But my goodness, it is very, very filling, and I can tell you that I may have overindulged a little, but it's one of those dishes that it encourages serious siesta. It's very, very good and very satisfying, but my word, there was a definite sense of thereafter needing severe nappage. So yeah, thank you so much, Spooky, for the likes. So yeah, as we are getting started, I'm going to remind you all that on this channel, our rule is such that if you are rude, you get the boot. We don't allow rudeness. It's our only rule. You can agree, you can disagree, you can have your own opinions. In fact, we'd love you to share them. Comment hugely as much as you like. Like, share, subscribe, do all of the good things that keep the channel going. Become a fan. Why not? We like fans. Send lots and lots and lots of gifts. Keep us going, because we definitely need it. Share it with your friends, and it will allow us to do more. But that all said, yeah, could these things have happened? Huge thanks for all those likes. I do appreciate. Could these things have happened? And one of the most well-known stories in the Christian, or let us rather say in the Abrahamic world of religion, because it indeed is echoed in the Jewish Testament, the Christian Testament, and the Muslim Testaments. So it's a common story, but we could argue that of course it would be, because naturally they are linked as being based in the Abrahamic religion. So of course they're going to all say the same thing to a certain degree. But what if it was real and there was a great flood? If there was, you would assume that people outside the sort of Middle East area where the Abrahamic religion began, they would also have legends of a flood. Surely you would think that other people would mention these things if it was real. And I started doing a little research, and unsurprisingly, to me at least, they do. So I thought it would be a great thing to start with our theme, what I can refer to, I suppose, as the ages of man. Are there ages to humanity? And what does that imply? Thank you so much for following the live there. And I was having a look because, yes, as I said, I do like the Greek very much. Hesiod mentions that there are 5 ages to humanity. This is in the Greek view. So we're jumping away from the Abrahamic for a moment, just to consider the idea of ages. Now, each age ends with complete destruction and a restarting of the world, in a way. Caleb, hello to you. Are you in fine and fabulous form? I hope so. So, according to the Greeks, what do they say? Well, the ages of man in a progression of 5 distinct races, starting with the most ideal and descending into the worst. So Hesiod, who was a Greek poet, in his work known as the Works and Days, speaks of the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Heroic Age, and the Iron Age. Each age represents, quite worryingly, a decline in morality and an increase in hardship from the previous one, with the gods creating a new lesser race after each previous one is destroyed. So the first and most perfect age was ruled by the Titan Cronus, and humans lived in harmony with the gods, free from suffering, hard work, and old age. They lived in a perpetual spring, and upon death became benevolent spirits. But then, of course, that all ended when the kiddies of the Titans, which became known as the Greek gods, took out the Titans and took over. Then began the Silver Age. And in the Silver Age, it was less ideal. Thanks again for those likes. Humans were recreated by Zeus. They had long childhoods, but were still less virtuous, and eventually angered Zeus, who destroyed them all. Thereafter, everything began again in the Bronze Age, and it was a time of warlike people who used weapons and armor made of bronze. They fought and killed each other until Zeus, disgusted by their violence, destroyed them using a great flood. Thereafter began the Heroic Age. Now, this age is a break in the pattern of decline because noble heroes who fought in great wars and grand quests such as the Trojan War came about. They were far more righteous than the Bronze Age people, and those who survived their trials were sent to live in the Isles of the Blessed and became demigods. But that also ended, and things went downhill yet again. And thus began the Iron Age, the current and final age for Hesiod, a time of hardship with humans enduring labor and disease and suffering. Furthermore, the age is characterized by a complete breakdown of morality, with a lack of justice, respect, and familial loyalty, and Hesiod believed that the gods had largely abandoned humanity in this age and predicted a future destruction for this race as well. So we are doomed for this one as well, according to Hesiod. But what is most interesting is that there was a flood, and therein begins the topic for tonight, in the theme of the ages of man. What about floods? So much thanks for all of those likes. I appreciate very, very greatly. So the ages of man were basically designed to show how at a time we had it all, and that thereafter, for reasons, we stuffed up and had to be wiped out. Now, by and large, in the Greek version, we were completely wiped out and recreated, whereas other versions in other cultures do say that there were survivors who rebuilt humanity, which is slightly different. Nevertheless, this idea was actually taken on by the Romans as well, and it seemed that this degradation of the human condition is characterized deliberately with the symbolism of the metals, because each metal has decreased value but increased hardness. So they say at least it will get worse and worse and worse and worse as you go along. Now we know that the first golden age was the age of the Titans, and by and large, in much of Greek mythology, the Titans were supposed to be the bad guys, but it really does seem that that's not the case. Holy Ghost fire, yes indeed. Hi there. It seems things were actually pretty good. Nevertheless, the gods, as they were known, Zeus and his brothers, clearly decided that the Titans were not supposed to rule, and therefore they were ousted, and much was done to destroy these original Titans and the world along with it. Now, interestingly, in the Silver Age, they point out that unlike the Gold Age, where people lived to a very, very old age, but were very, very youthful and died peacefully and happily, in the Silver Age, they lived under the dominion of their mothers, and they only lived 100 years. And in that time, they spent in strife with one another. People refused to worship the gods, and because of this impiety, everybody got wiped out. But still, it wasn't too bad, because after you passed on, you went to the underworld and became... I'm sorry that I scared you. Though I do warn you, we do discuss strange and different things on this channel, and sometimes they do get a little fraught. So do be aware that and the fact it's Halloween means the odd scare may occur. Thank you for those likes. So in the Silver Age, you could still become a blessed spirit, whatever that might actually be, and live happily in the underworld. But once you kicked into the Bronze Age, men were hardened and tough, and the deed of Ares, which is of course war and violence, were their passion. Zeus created these humans out of the ash tree, and their armor was forged of bronze, as were their homes and idols and tools. And the men of this age were undone by their own violent ways, and left no named spirits. They dwell in the house of Hades. So they were doomed to be forgotten as well, which seems a little fraught. But nevertheless, the age after, the heroic age, is the really good one, and it doesn't descend down again and again and again as it should, but they sort of had a time of greatness. The heroes and demigod that fought at Thebes and Cadmus and Oedipus and the Trojan War, and for all of their heroics and wonder, they got taken onto the islands beyond the seas, the land beyond the seas, ruled by Kronos still, with sweet fruits flourishing thrice a year, far from the deathless gods. So it seems that, yeah, the Titans were actually pretty cool. And it was the gods that were a little bit unhinged. But we do know that in many cases in Greek mythology, the gods can be a touch unhinged. But at the end of the heroic age, it began our age, an existence of toil and misery. Children will dishonor their parents, brother fights brother, and the social contract between guest and host is forgotten. Might makes right, and bad men use lies to be thought good. And at the height of this age, humans no longer feel shame or indignation at wrongdoing. It's a pretty good description of many things in this day and age. Nevertheless, Zeus will end this age when babies will be born with grey hair. And at that time, gods will have forsaken humanity. There will be no help against evil. So our age, watch carefully, because should you see babies being born with grey hair, you will know the Greeks were right. And indeed, the end is nigh. Now, Ovid, of course, who was Roman, took this on with 4 ages. They skipped the heroic age, ending pretty much with the same general idea that the golden age was really, really great. Nobody suffered, but we didn't know navigation and did not explore the world. Nobody knew agriculture, but collected the food that fell from the trees. In the Silver Age, after Saturn, the god Saturn, was driven to Tartarus, Jupiter introduced the seasons, and people learnt the art of agriculture and lived in houses. In the Bronze Age, men were prone to warfare, but not impiety. So, still honoured the gods, but were violent. But the Iron Age, men demarcate nations with boundaries. They learn the arts of navigation and mining. They are warlike, greedy, and impious. Truth, modesty, and loyalty are nowhere to be found. And in this period, Astarea, the goddess of justice, leaves the earth to be bathed in slaughter. Exactly what all of this means in terms of us is to say that humanity has, in varying times, considered there to be specific ages which may or may not have been ended. And of course, we find that same idea with floods. So, rabbit holing tonight's topic, I went off to discover how many people talk about great floods. Why? And what was the point? So it turns out that in various mythologies, there are numerous instances of gods wiping out humanity. The most prominent one is actually Greek, where Zeus floods the earth to destroy mankind. And then, of course, the other great one is the Abrahamic tradition story, which we all know, Noah's flood. And of course, this means that things got to a point where the gods, or God, whichever cultural version it was, basically decided humanity couldn't cut it anymore and had to be wiped out and restarted. Now, of course, in terms of archaeology, are there any signs or evidence of at least a flood big enough for people to say this covers the whole world, at least as they would have known it? Is there any evidence of really, really serious floods? And yes, this is heading towards a theory that I've been toying with for years, which has kind of come up in a couple of our lives, about global warming and how often has it happened and what does that mean. So yes, we have stories to tell tonight. So of course, what kind of floods can we talk about? Well, the first one we know well, the Abrahamic traditions, that's the Jews, Christians, and Islam. The Great Flood, God destroys all humanity, leaving one righteous man and his family, and a number of animals, which then repopulate the world. Sounds good. Greek mythology has multiple ages, one of which was indeed destroyed by a flood, and Zeus's flood wiped out everything, sparing only Deucalion and Pyrrha, who repopulated the world by throwing stones that turned into people, which is an interesting take on it. The Mayans speak of the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Quiché Maya, describing several attempts by the gods to create humanity, and each attempt failing before they finally created man of maize, and that was successful and didn't need to be destroyed. Hindu mythology speaks of the gods creating humans, followed by a destruction, such as the story of Manu, who saved humanity from the Great Flood to repopulate the earth. Now, all in all, it would seem that while these are the bigger versions, there are, in fact, according to some of the research, and they don't mention every single one, and we certainly couldn't in one live, there are over 200 flood myths, which is a heck of a lot of flood myths right there. So let's look at a couple of them and see what we have available to entice ourselves. Now, according to archaeology, I have to begin with a bit of sense, according to the scientists, so they get upset with us. Thank you so much to, is that Mushy? It is Mushy. Thank you for the likes. I appreciate that greatly. So they say, there is no evidence of a single worldwide great flood happening on Earth, and geologists have found no evidence of one. The idea of a global flood likely comes from the very widespread flood myths, like Noah's Ark, based on regional floods and ancient stories that predate the biblical account. While there have been large regional floods and tsunamis throughout Earth's history, a single flood covering the entire planet has not occurred. There is a lack of geological evidence for a single flood, and that would have been something we could find, because there is no evidence on high elevation areas like the Himalayas or the Andes. There is not enough water on the Earth to cover the planet in a single flood. If a global flood had occurred, ancient civilizations that existed before, during, and after the flood would not have been able to record or participate in the event if they were not affected by it. Flood myths versus reality basically shows that there are stories of pretty bad floods, but nothing real. However, I'm going to partly call bullshit, and here is why. Here's the thing. Work with me. Imagine for a moment that global warming is cyclic. The world warms and warms and warms. It's slow, but it's a natural phenomenon. As it warms, the ice caps, north and south, melt. The sea levels rise. Now, they might not cover all the land, but there's enough water there to cover a lot of the land. Certainly, let's be fair, if you melted the entirety of the ice caps, Great Britain's gone, the Netherlands are gone, a lot of Europe is gone, a lot of North America is gone. Africa's pretty safe because, at least in the southern part, you have very high elevation. South America's pretty well off, and large portions of Russia are quite well off. But a lot of the highly inhabited areas around the world would certainly be in serious trouble and possibly even be underwater. If then, after this great flooding and global warming, the cycle now goes and starts going back to your ice age. Okay? The poles rebuild, drawing that water back into them. The poles get bigger and bigger and bigger. The world gets colder. You now have far more exposed land. So during an ice age, there's a lot more land, including places that in our own time are underwater. So there may be lost civilizations down there. We note that the oldest known civilizations seem to be in areas of high elevation. Teotihuacan, right at the top of the mountains. The old Tibetan places, right at the top of the mountains. The ancient African sites, very high elevation. It might amaze you if you go and look at southern Africa, from coast inland, you rise up to a couple of thousand feet pretty fast. So definitely would survive a global flood in that regard. So maybe over the courses of the turning of the world, you get a cycle. Global warming, everything melts, sea levels rise, a lot of things destroyed, Earth renews itself, starts meandering back down, getting colder and colder, ice age where the most land is exposed, then gets warmer and warmer and warmer again, and you go in cycles, round and round and round. And it's what the Earth does. And while I'm not saying that humanity isn't pushing global warming faster, global warming is natural. And it happens often. And we repopulate the Earth after each one. So ancient civilizations reach a point where they're fairly advanced, wiped out, and start again. If you think about it logically, yes, we have a lot of technology and we have very skilled people in our culture of today. But how many people, even knowing how to, say, fix a car, could build one from scratch? And I mean from melted down the metal, formed it, etc. Not very many. So even though we have highly skilled people, if you suddenly found yourself in a flooded world and struggling to survive, a lot of technology would simply disappear. We'd lose it within a generation or two and restart. Now you'd say, well, why isn't there evidence of this? Maybe there is. We do find strange archaeological anomalies, and there's a heck of a lot on the seafloor we know nothing about. We know less about the bottom of the sea than we do about the surface of the moon. This is a scientific fact. Maybe there's a lot more out there than you think. So with that in mind, let's look at some of the mythological accounts of floods. So, starting ourselves off, in order to make life interesting, let's have a look at what they say about Noah. Because as we know, that's the most common one with the Abrahamic viewpoint for us. Now, in the Bible, there are 3 destructions of the earth described. 1 has happened, 2 yet to come. The first destruction came when the flood covered the earth in the days of Noah, sparing, apparently, only 8 righteous people, Genesis 6:8. In one of the best-known promises in the Old Testament, signified by the rainbow, God promised that he would never again destroy the earth by a flood. Nevertheless, there are two passages in the Bible predicting that the world will be destroyed, maybe not by a flood, but destroyed nevertheless. So Isaiah 65, 17 to 20 speaks of a restored earth. After destruction comes by fire. It wasn't a flood, rainbow still counts. In 2 Peter 3, 4 to 14, the judgment of fire is kept in store for a day of judgment, possibly the day of judgment. We shall see. Well, hopefully we won't see, but humanity will see. The other destructions is described in our text, Revelations 21:1. And then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. Now, many biblical scholars say that Isaiah, Peter, and Revelations they say it causes problems. A thorough examination of the two passages suggests that since death appears in the Isaiah passage, Isaiah wasn't talking about the eternal order, but rather the millennial kingdom. And since 2 Peter refers to the day of the Lord, it means that it will be the end of time. Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. You then might ask, why would God destroy the heavens? And it does say that even the heavens might become contaminated by evil. Remembering that you've got more than one variety of heaven in this view. You've got the heaven as in the sky, the universe beyond and all the rest of it, but also the heaven of God, i.e. where God lives, his house. So it's a little unclear which is being referred to. Maybe there's more to this. So they might be saying that the atmospheric heavens, our sky, or even the stellar heavens where the stars and everything are, might be destroyed, but not his house. For Satan lives within the earthly heavens. Ephesians, of course, indicates that Satan, who is the god of this dark world, and his emissaries are performing spiritual wickedness in the heavenly realms. Now, obviously, they are not in that case referring to where God lives. They're not getting up to mischief in his house. They're talking our heavens. So maybe that indicates a more catastrophic event this side. And then God thereafter would be like, okay, we'll wipe all of it out and start again with a new heaven and a new earth, and this lot will go, and there will no longer be any sea. Now, 2/3 of the earth is covered with water, and the remaining 1/3 includes large areas that we can't live in because of mountains and deserts. So there's only a small percentage of livable world. And it's kind of implied that the new one will not have the problems of either mountains or sea, and we will be able to live all over. And thereafter, that's how it will be. And along with it, of course, they talk about you getting a new body and yada, 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 which doesn't connect to the flood myth at the moment. But absolutely, there was one wipeout, which is important, and it won't happen by flood again. Now, when exactly did the flood occur? Well, if it did occur in the Middle East, it definitely predated the building of the pyramids and the Sphinx and all of that, because there is a certain amount of sedimentary rock which may or may not have been laid down there by a flood, possibly local, possibly global, we don't know yet. So there were certain indications of floodage of a variety. Now, how much floodage? This is not clear as yet. Nevertheless, let us move along. Huge thanks for all the likes that keep coming in. I appreciate it very, very, very greatly. So, flood myths found all over the place. We know that the Noah's Ark tradition is not the oldest flood tradition. The oldest flood tradition in the Near East, in fact, is in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, we shall start looking at, shall we say, more on that side, because there are so many. We know that Africa have almost no flood legends, but there are a couple. The Khoisan, the Kwaya, the Mbuti, the Maasai, the Mandin, and the Yoruba do have, but by and large they're not as harsh as the other ones, because we are pretty high up. So we're probably okay. We like this. Egypt has floods. The Americas have floods in the Algonquin, the Anishinaabe, the Choctaw, the Comox, the Cree, the Hopi, the Inuit, the Menominee, the Micmac, the Nipmuc, the Nisqually, the Ojibwe, the Orwiganarook, the Ottawa, the Saanich, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Canary, the Inca, the Mapuche, the Muisca, the Tupi, the Gilgamesh, China, Iran, India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand. So all the low-lying areas right the way through Vietnam, Siberia, medieval Europe have, among the Irish, the Britons, the Cornish, the Welsh, the Finnish, Australia, Polynesia, again, all islands, just saying, and there's a lot to be considered with that. So, flood myths are everywhere. So let's begin with the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was probably written somewhere between 2100 and 1800 BC. The stories are from the Sumerian gods, who transform Mesopotamia into a fertile garden landscape. Hard labor leads to a revolt of the lower gods, and to pacify it, the first pair of humans were created to do the work in the place of the gods. Sounds familiar? After a few thousand years, however, humans have multiplied to such an extent that they disturb the gods with their north. So Enlil, the highest of the gods, decides, you know what, I need my Sunday rest, and he unleashes a mighty flood to wipe out humanity. Now the rebellious god Enki secretly warns his priest, Asarhaisis, of the impending catastrophe, giving him detailed instructions on how to build a boat. Asarhaisis and his family survive, thus ensuring the continued existence of mankind. In the Gilgamesh flood myth, the flood is survived by the man Utnapishtim, and similarly, a later flood myth, the Eridugenesis, that were found in the ruins of Nippur, which is a separate place to the Sumerians, they also said pretty much the same thing. So again, welcome to all the newcomers that have joined. Awesome. Thank you for those likes, I appreciate. So we now find that we've got a serious Babylonian myth as well that were translated talking about their floods and so on, but their version is slightly different, but it seems to imply that over the Middle East, let us say that, there was a flood. It implies that there was a boat built, maybe more than one, and most of humanity got taken out, but a few good ones, they had to be good, they survived, the bad ones didn't, which is a typical thing. There's that old slightly cynical saying, how do you know who were the guys who were right in war? And the answer is, the ones who won, obviously. And it's cynical insofar that it points out that the guys who survived write the history. So of course they're the good guys. Whether or not they really were is another question. But in all of these heroic deeds or amazing survival type stories, the good guys always win because, well, they write the history because they survived. And the guys that didn't survive didn't write the history. So just saying, is that a cynical viewpoint? Yes, it is. Is it probably also true? Yes, it probably also is. Just saying. But yes, bear with my cynicism, if you will. But at the very least, we can claim that in the Middle East there was a flood big enough to cover it. Now, of course, these ancient texts are echoed absolutely along with the Genesis version, where the god Yahweh created man from the dust of the earth, but they got out of hand. And so, great flood, everyone's going to have to be wiped out. Noah proves to be a decent guy, so God goes to Noah and says, look, you're the only decent guy left, here's how to make a boat. We do need you to keep a few animals, so you're going to have to take them on board as well. He builds it, calls the animals of the earth to enter the ark. Everybody outside the ark wipes out, and then of course Noah gets off and they start again. Now, you might then ask, well, one family? Yes, he did have a couple of sons and their wives on board, but yeah, that's pretty inbred. Nevertheless, you will find that there is a basic understanding that there was big destruction and things started again. Now, jumping along, because after all, that's what we do. Hinduism speaks of the same basic idea, which does matter, because again, you're looking at weird boats. The story is all over the ancient Middle East. So you absolutely got a flood in the Middle East. Now, the Middle East isn't that high for a lot of it, geographically speaking at least, which implies that it's very possible that there could have been a fairly epic flood. And we know, for example, that Noah, when he managed to get out of this, he had to land on the top of a mountain, Mount Ararat. Now, many of the arguments against these stories are kind of picky. The boat in the Epic of Gilgamesh wouldn't have been seaworthy from its description, so it couldn't have existed. It took 7 days for the rain to flood the earth, which would never have been enough. But 7 is a complete number. In the Middle East, in general, in all the religions, they tended to say that if something was done completely, it took 7 days, 7 months, 7 years, because they're saying in the fullness of time. So these are arguments that are a little bit of a dodgy one. Hawaii, they talk of, again, waters coming up, man builds boat, fills it with animals, one family is survived. Doesn't work because you couldn't fit all of the animals in. Yeah, thanks for the like there, I do appreciate that greatly. China, legends of the flood. Fu He, his wife, and 3 sons and 3 daughters survive. They then repopulate the earth. There are more than one Greek flood myth, but the biggest, most likely one, somebody built a chest to survive in. Now, everyone keeps going on that these things are all stories. They're rubbish. They're not real. They couldn't happen. But what we need to keep in mind, really, is that we're talking about the idea of an escape, not technical accuracy. In Hinduism, in the Satapatha Brahmana, from around the 6th century BC, there are stories of this. The Puranas contain the story of a great flood. The Manvantara Sandhya, where the Matsya avatar of Vishnu warns the first man, Manu, of an impending flood and advises him to build a giant boat. Same theme. The Zoroastrian Mazdaism, Ahriman tries to destroy the world with a drought, which Mithra ends by shooting an arrow into a rock from which a flood springs. Ahriman Ahriman, remember Zoroastrian is dualistic. Ahriman is the bad guy, and Mithra is the good guy. Though he stops the giant drought, it does flood the earth, and one man survives in an ark with his cattle. Now, even the story of Yima and the Vara was originally a flood myth, according to some, and the harsh winter was added in due to the dry nature of eastern Iran, as flood myths do not have much effect as harsh winters. So he argued that the mention of melted water flowing is a flood myth, or as we have said, the ending of an ice age, maybe? I'm just saying. Thanks for the like there, pup. All I'm saying is that the world as we know it today is not how it was or how it will be. We know for fact that the geography has changed many times over the centuries for all kinds of reasons. So to think in terms of one set way is probably very silly. Jaden, hello, are you alive? So we need to sort of broaden our minds a little bit and think also in terms that back in the day people didn't move much. So if it covered everywhere that you knew, it would be worldwide to you, even if it didn't necessarily cover every last tiny bit of land everywhere. In the Timaeus, written by Plato about 360 BC, Timaeus describes a flood myth similar to the earlier versions. In it, the Bronze Age... I do apologize. We have yet again ticking and talking being sillying. Inactivity detected. No, it's not. We're talking and interacting and waving at people and all kinds of other things. Much thanks for the like, sir. So we find immediately that the Bronze Age humans angers Zeus with war. And Zeus is like, yeah, I'm done with you, so we're going to flood. The Titan Prometheus, who created humans from clay, showing again that the Titans were not the bad guys, tells the secret plan to Deucalion and advises him to build a boat. After 9 nights and days, the water starts receding and the ark lands on a mountain. The Cheyenne of the North American Great Plains have a tradition where the flood altered the course of their history, occurring probably around the Missouri River Valley. The Blackfeet, another Great Plains tribe, also have a story called Language on a Mountain. I just want to digress for a second here and say the Great Plains are very flat. If you started any kind of flood out there, it would cover a lot of it. Just saying. So in the Language on a Mountain, the deity Napi, referred to as the Old Man, tells the story of a great flood that swept through the land. After the flood, the Old Man made the water different colors. He gathered the people on top of a large mountain, where he gave them water of different colors. Old Man then told the people to drink, then speak, and so they did. And everyone was then speaking a different language, except for those who received the black water, who were speaking the same language. And they were the Blackfoot tribes, and the Piegan, a related tribe, and the Siksika, and the... Yes, join us. Jay. And the Kainai, who are also... Hello. You're alive. Are you good?
I don't know. I just had a sausage.
Okay.
What the hell does it do that sound when I laugh? Then like be.
I don't know.
Can you also hear?
Little bit. Maybe
Is my
it's...
voice clear enough
Yes, it is clear.
so you can hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, puta madre. What did I just say? Oh no, man. What do
Hey.
you want? Get out of my room.
I need the father.
I don't have the charger.
Daddy.
No, that's a sausage roll.
He's drinking his water.
Yeah, let the dog drink his water.
Good, Lolly.
Yeah, good Lily, now go out.
No.
What's happening?
You'll never win against sisters.
Sister, he's my brother.
Is that your brother?
Yes, and he doesn't listen. Nah. You don't don't eat my phone. Okay, you can take the charger out, go. You can stay in it, but you don't talk because you'll get me banned by your voice.
Okay, so we're talking flood mythology, and could it be real?
In what now?
Flood mythology. So in the Bible, Noah's Ark, yes?
Oh yeah.
Now, it turns out there are stories like that in just about every culture in the world. Now, we have discovered that proper geologists, and I say that very loosely, say that there is no possibility there could ever be a world flood, because there's no evidence. However, as it seems, there are stories of a great flood from all over the world, and there are evidence of floods in those areas, which kind of implies that maybe geologists are wrong.
Can I tell you something that
Yes.
I found out?
Tell us.
You see, water isn't from Earth.
Hey?
It's from like little particles that's in the sky that like mixes up together. They do the bad thing, and then they fall to Earth in like a liquid form. And you know how like the sun and everything was still there.
Yes.
So like it made steam, then it like made more and more and more and more. That's how we have so much water.
Well,
I'm not believing in that, but that's what I heard.
to be fair, we know that water is formed from two gases, and that it did originally start forming due to various chemical reactions at the beginning of time, as it were, where the earth was very volcanic and more water developed, which caused the earth to stabilize to a certain degree. So it's
And I
not
heard, like,
entirely wrong.
And I heard that the moon is actually like a piece of Earth that just blasted out.
That's another thing, actually, that it may be quite correct. Things nowadays, they say that moons are either asteroids that were passing that got caught in the gravitational field, or that hit the planet and caused break-off.
And doesn't the moon like protect us from like meteors sometimes?
Yes,
That's
it
what
does.
shows.
Yes, it does. So there is a lot more weirdness out there still yet to discover. But nevertheless, so
What
the North American
Where's Dark Thoughtness? What?
Endless
Deep
Thoughts.
Thoughts.
Endless Thoughts. She's not with us
Yeah,
at the
Endless
moment.
Thoughts.
But Spooky's with us.
Vino? Oh, that dude.
So we've got that, and Caleb is with us.
Oh no, Endless Thoughts is here.
Oh, has she joined now? She must
I
have...
saw it.
Yes, she has just joined in. Welcome, Endless Thoughts. And thank you so much for the likes. So yes, everybody is here at last. We are very, very happy.
Not everybody, there's someone else here that needed to come.
Who?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because Ask for My Name changed his name to Spooky. Spooky Streamer Thought. So he is here. Endless Thoughts is here. Caleb's here. You're here. All the usual suspects. And funnily enough, I'm here. Ta-da! But
Oh, you know what you could do? Like,
yes,
you know the fan club stickers.
yes,
You stop saying yes like that. You sound like a creepy scientist.
yeah.
Yes, we will put you in that machine, and you will turn into a liquid form. So then, like, you make like stickers, right? But it's like scary stickers. Like one should say like
Well,
spooky or
I'm hoping that TikTok will wake up and allow fan club members to have Halloween themed stickers, which they haven't yet. But there is indeed a fan club, and you can indeed get stickers.
I am in a fan club. But like, you should make your own stickers because there's only all these. Oh my gosh! There's only all these boring ones. That's
Well,
very good now.
yes, there are only boring ones, but I don't know how to make stickers for TikTok.
Yo.
Hey, Jinx, are you alive? Are you
So-
good? Awesome, awesome. Okay, so flood myths. We know that the Great Plains are fairly flattish, and if you had a fairly serious flood, it would definitely make a big impact, and you would have to go to higher ground, which, according to their myth, they did. So yes, and yes, thank you, Joe, for all those pretty stickers in the comments, at least, even if we can't have them on the TikToky live type thing. So we've absolutely got.
So I'm gonna tell you how to like make your own stickers, right? So you see, like, you know where you go comment, right?
Yes.
Like, you can comment on your own live. You type like you press the heart sign, that little heart sign.
Yes, but I can't necessarily make stickers that will be a reward to you if you join the fan club.
Oh.
That's what I want. So if you join the fan club, you get spooky Halloween stickers. That's what I would like.
I am in a fan club though.
We're going to check on you to see if you're in the fan club. Dum dum dum
I am,
dum
go
dum
check.
dum 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 dum. Of course you are. I'm teasing you.
Oh, okay. Jinx, you better join this fan club, or else the little skeleton behind you
How?
will come
How?
at you.
How?
It's
Endless Thoughts
yeah,
says, and Endless Thoughts just gave us gifties. Thank you for the presences. I do appreciate.
Endless Thoughts. You can give him gifties, but you can't give me. It's fine. I've been supporting him my whole October, I think.
The whole October.
Yo, I don't have any coins.
Your voice is more cocker than mine.
Yeah,
I
language,
think
brother,
so.
or we smack you.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
No,
so in history, floods in the wake of the last glacial period, and again,
Endless Thoughts sent something.
yes, she sent an ice cream to you.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'll
so
be watching all your videos if I can. Endless Thoughts. I'm telling you all the Bible things.
remember that we said that the Earth is cyclic, and we get global warming, which raises the sea level, followed by an ice age and global cooling, which are not fast. It's not an instant thing. So the last glacial period happened around 100,000 years ago, which is fine, but it did happen. And it's speculated to have inspired the myths of things like Atlantis. Or maybe it was a memory of what happened. And maybe if we get another ice age, it might expose enough seabed to discover Atlantis. Just saying. Because Plato's allegory, it's a story because geologists can't find it. They're still digging up. Like I said, we know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the bottom of our sea. Just throwing it out there. So maybe in the Mediterranean you will find Atlantis somewhere there. Stone Age society that lived in the Mediterranean area could have been wiped out by rising sea levels. Just saying, if that isn't a reasonably worldwide flood that wipes out humanity, at least for them,
Dun 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 dun.
right? Thank you so much, See, Endless Thoughts helps us get to our live goals every time. She's like super, super generous. She is very kind to us.
Oh damn! Why am I already at 13?
Well, I'm working on getting up to that level. Nevertheless,
No, look at the little stars. The stars on our profile pictures.
yes,
Mine says 13.
yes, you see you're improving.
Oh, okay.
You're getting bigger and better. I told you, patience is a virtue. Now, here is the next set of things that may or may not be important, because along with just floods and the melting of the ice caps and what have you, the other major thing that is hugely destructive, water organized, etc., are things like asteroid impacts that cause tsunamis. And we know that there was an oceanic asteroid impact that occurred between Africa and Antarctica around the time of a major solar eclipse that caused a massive tsunami.
Have you noticed that the African like Africa, the continent, it looks like a skull that's missing a few pieces, right?
Yes. It's watching you. The earth is alive. Now, we also know in the mythologies that around this time, thank you so much for the roses. Oh, we're being spoilt today again. So around the time that this giant tsunami was supposed to have occurred, the Hindu mythology speaks of the alignment of 5 planets at this time. Mythology. The Chinese story links the flood to the end of the reign of the Empress Nuwa, which occurred around a major full solar eclipse. And according to astrophysicists, a major solar eclipse that lasted a while would mess with the way that the tides work, etc., and result in things like tsunamis and more. So maybe these myths are not as mythic as you might think.
What if the world stops moving? Like, you know how the world is moving every time?
Yes.
What if the world stopped moving
If it
for
stopped,
like 1 millisecond?
I don't know about a millisecond, but if the world stopped moving, we would lose gravitational field and we would fall off. And the Earth would probably crash into the sun.
Not fun.
Not good for us at all.
I don't know what happened now. But like, for me, different glasses. The Coke tastes better. Not that Coke, the other Coke. TikTok, I'm not talking about Coke. I'm not gonna say that word, I don't want to get banned.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
It's safer.
Coca-Cola.
Now,
You know, in the 1960s, Coca-Cola had Coke in it.
they say it's never been proved and it's never been disproved.
Wait, my dad.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Exactly. And Coke is not saying.
Because they don't want us to know.
Exactly. Okay, now,
Correct.
all of the cultures that have said that the world was destroyed seem to come from lower altitudes, and like Mesopotamia is a riverine civilization and flood prone. So all the ones that say that they were worldwide, clearly their world, if these sea levels rose by a couple of meters, for certain people it would be their whole world, because people didn't travel much. Now, there was an excavation in the 1930s at Shurupak, which is Tel Farah in Iraq nowadays. And they reported back that the early dynastic layers of the site were separated by 60 centimeters of a yellow layer of alluvial sand and clay, which basically to us non-geologists mean that there was a flood. Big one. 60 centimeters of alluvial sand and clay is a lot to be deposited. Okay. And the Tigris-Euphrates river system is pretty big and wide. So if you flooded the entire area, it would have affected a huge area. Now, Shuruppak in the Mesopotamian legend was the city that we think of as Utanapishtim, and the king had to build a boat to survive the flood. Now, this fits to the timeline. So there was a giant flood and the waters of the sea rose. So according to the Mesopotamian myth, the entire area geographically was modified. The Persian Gulf filled after the seawaters rose following the last glacial period. The sea levels were about 120 meters lower globally at around the time about 18,000 BP, and then rose until 10,000 years later, where they reached the current levels, which now are at an average of 40 meters above the floor of the Gulf. So there was a lot more land, and people would have lived on it. I'm terribly sorry I hear that. Now, Endosaurs ask, if the planet suddenly stops when everything will suddenly begin to move, you'll probably fly into a building. Well, how fast are we talking a stop? If you stopped the entire planet immediately, like to a dead stop, yes, you absolutely would. Because we're actually spinning fairly fast in terms of...
I'm being tortured. He's giving me salted chips, salt and vinegar chips.
That's not a torture. Then don't eat them. Salt and vinegar is one of the best flavors in the world. You are a terrible heathen and should be punished. But absolutely yes.
I'll be right back.
Okay,
Need to
we'll
drink
wait
some
for you.
water. I'm so dehydrated.
So if you stop the Earth dead, we would fly into buildings, and buildings would fall over. It would be bad for us. Remember, the further out you are from the central point of turn, centrifugal force makes things go even faster and faster, and the world is pretty big. So yeah, it wouldn't be a good thing if they just stopped the Earth from spinning. Also, it is the spinning of the Earth, or the planet's albedo, that allows us to maintain gravity. So you wouldn't only fly sideways, you would fly up. And the atmosphere would fade off probably into space, in which case everything would die. And that would be bad. We do not want stopping the Earth. So children, do not do this at home. Do not stop the Earth. It's bad for you. Just saying. But yeah, that is a very, very important point. And it may, if the planet albedo changes even slightly, it could have major effects. And we do know that it can and does. When the poles shift, because what we call the North Pole was not always the North Pole, it does shift slowly. If it shifted dramatically, we'd have major issues. The whole weather system would change, there'd be massive flooding, there'd be all kinds of volcanic activity. It would go south very, very fast. And yeah, we'd have world destruction, just like in the Bible. Just saying. So if you're talking the area, they say, around the Mesopotamian area, the Persian Gulf area, had around 800 kilometers by 200 kilometers of space, low-lying fertile region, and human habitation would have been very big there for about 100,000 years. And if suddenly all of that flooded, that's pretty much your whole world gone. Just saying. So world flood, more possible than you might think. The Mediterranean basin as well, where the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, all of whom document a flood, have seashells, fish fossils, all of that stuff inland and even in mountain areas. We know, for example, that to the north of Africa, not us safe people in the south, but in the north, many of the deserts are filled with skeletons of whales and shells and all kinds of things, which kind of implies that it was flooded. Which then tells us that the idea that the Greeks, Egyptians, Romans, and so on had in mythology might actually be true. So the Deucalion myth says that there could have been a large tsunami in the Mediterranean Sea caused by the Thera eruption, which had a geographical date of around 1600 BCE, so quite a while back. And this could be the myth's historical basis. If remember, a lot of Greece and the Aegean Sea are all islands. And if you've got a major tsunami going through there, a lot of places would have been pretty badly hit. We know that there's another story that talks about the Black Sea deluge, which is geologists that say this, not the mythology. They reckon that there may have been a major deluge around 5,000 to 6,000 BC, somewhere in there, where the Black Sea basin became completely filled in. The Black Sea basin is where a lot of people lived, right off. Thank you so much for all of those likes, which implies then immediately that these myths were possibly true. We know that if any comets, meteors, or anything even come close, or especially if they hit, they cause major disruptions in the sea levels. So whether or not there was some bugger called Noah that built a boat and put 2 of every animal in, that might be mythological. But the idea that people escaped and needed boats to do so and there was a great flood absolutely is true. And geologists just don't like this fact. We see that the world is cyclic. Now let us move even more, because if you look in the theogony of the Bibliotheca, Prometheus molded men out of water and earth, clay, and gave them fire unknown to Zeus, and he had hidden them. When Zeus learned of it, he ordered Hephaestus to nail Prometheus to Mount Caucasus, a Scythian mountain. He was duly nailed to the mountain and kept bound for many, many years, and every day an eagle came down and devoured his liver, which grew back thereafter. So this was a punishment for Prometheus giving fire, up until he was saved by the hero Heracles. Now, Prometheus had a son, Deucalion, and he was reigning in the regions around Pythia. He got married to Epimetheus, and also apparently, he married Pyrrha, the daughter of Epimetheus and Pandora, who was the first woman. And when Zeus would destroy these people in the Bronze Age, Prometheus came down to Deucalion, his son, and said, listen, make a big chest. He stocked it with provisions, and he embarked in it with Pyrrha. Zeus then started flooding everywhere, flooded a greater part of Greece, that all men were destroyed except for a few that fled to the high mountains, as Peloponnesus was overwhelmed. And there, when the rain ceased, he landed and made sacrifice to Zeus, who then sent Hermes to him and allowed him to choose how he would live. And he said, I want to continue humanity. So at the bidding of Zeus, he took up stones and threw them over his head. And where these stones that Deucalion landed, they became men. And where the stones landed that Pyrrha threw, they became women. So people were metaphorically known as the people Laos, stone. So right off bat, Lynx Official, okay, good night, sleep well. And Endless Thoughts is also off. Do not apologize. The fact that you are there for a bit is massively wondrous to me. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for all the gifts as well. So to the guys who are getting on with life, I thank you for being here. Have a wonderful evening. Especially you, dear. I hope you have a fantastic one, and we will chat again. But nevertheless, so we see immediately that these stories say that they started all over again after a major flood. And this went on for quite a while, and they developed all kinds of progeny and more, which then moved on with, and so on and so forth. But the deluge of Deucalion nevertheless is recorded. We also then have the same idea in Arcadia, in the northeast Aegean, and this was the story of Dardanus, and the deluge occurred there as well, flooding all, and even up to heights where they had to escape to a mountain, which then became the island of Samothraces. And he escaped on an inflated skin to the opposite shores of Asia Minor, so flooded most but not everything, and he settled on Mount Ida. Due to the fear of another flood, they lived in the open and didn't build a city, but eventually they moved off down to a large plain, and they built a city named Troy. This is from the mountains we now call the Dardanelles, formerly known as Hellespont, a narrow strait in northwestern Turkey that connects the Aegean Sea to the Sea of Marmara, and we know the ancient city of Troy does exist, which everybody thought was a story. So yet again, wrong to the geologists. Mythology seems to be true. But we have yet more. In China, even further away, the Great Flood of Gunyu, they call it a myth, a major flood in ancient China that allegedly continued for at least 2 generations, which resulted in great population displacements and, among other disasters such as storms and famine. People left their homes to live in high hills and mountains or nest on the trees. According to the mythological and historical sources, it's traditionally the 3rd millennium BCE, or coincidentally, around 2200 BCE, during the reign of Emperor Yao, which is more or less the time that a number of other world floods seem to have occurred. Archaeological evidence say that there was an outburst flood at the Jinshi Gorge on the Yellow River, comparable to severe events around the world that, again, around 2000 BCE, a few centuries later maybe, but memory, time, we're talking thousands of years to be fair, and might have been where the Great Flood story came from, but the Yellow River managed to overflow to a degree that most people were destroyed, and the few that survived got to the higher levels. Now, the Great Flood plays a dramatic role in Chinese mythology, and the various versions thereof present a number of examples of the flood myth motif around the world. Calling bullshit again, because if it flooded as much as they say in mythology, and looking at the generalized geology of the area, it would have covered a sufficient area that, at least to the people living there, it covered the whole world, barring a few mountaintops. Throwing it out there. It was said to be a punishment from the gods for sin, etc., etc., and it was the heroic and praiseworthy that managed to survive, and so on and so forth. And through the efforts of these heroes constructing dikes and dams and canals by the heroes, they managed to get the water to drain away so people survived, which fits exactly to what people might do in a major situation like this in order to survive. And again, all around that sort of time. So, yeah, like endless boiling water, the flood is pouring forth destruction, boundless and overwhelming. It overtops hills and mountains, rising and ever rising. It threatens the very heavens. How the people must be groaning and suffering. When people tell stories, you know they grow a little bit. But they say in the history that it covered most, and people went to the high lands. Of course, that would fit to the idea thereof. Thank you for those likes. So right again, we see that China around that time has a major flood myth. And if that is the case, it kind of would fit to the idea of the cyclic idea of global warming and the melting of the caps before it cycled past, went on and on and on. So you have your ice age, your global warming, your flooding, the ice caps start receding, then they start building again, the water recedes, and so the cycle goes and goes, which means that we are heading for the next great flood, and the world as we know it will be smacked. In Aztec mythology, the flood story goes around Coco, where Tata and his wife Nene survive it. The gods sent a great flood to destroy humanity due to its wickedness. Coco and Nene were the only humans to survive. They escaped the flood waters by hollowing out a cypress tree and using it as a boat. When the flood survives, their boat comes to rest on a mountain called Colocan. To repopulate the earth, the god Tezcatlipoca instructed them to eat only maize. Eventually they had many children, all born mute for whatever reason, and after divine intervention they began to speak, but spoke different languages, and were scattered across the world, which the Aztecs believed was why different people spoke different things. The themes that is important is destruction, survival, rebirth of civilization. So right away you've got exactly the same thing in the same area. Now that was the Aztecs. In Inca mythology, the Una Pachucuti is the name of the flood that Viracocha, these names are hard for me, caused to destroy the people around the lake Titicaca, saving two to bring civilization to the rest of the world. The process of destruction is linked with new construction, and it's considered to be a great revolution. The Inca's supreme being, Kontiki, Viracocha, first created a race of giants, but they were unruly, so he destroyed them in a flood and turned them to stone. Following the deluge, he created human beings from smaller stones. The Imprius race is the pre-Inca civilization of the Tiwanaku Americans around Lake Titicaca, which is a high lake in the Andes, and they were destroyed by a flood, and the Incas came after to take over, and they managed to escape it in a wooden box, or maybe, if you want, a boat, possibly. What a shock. Now let's look at some real life events that did happen, and think about what this would actually mean if you were a person way back when, probably very superstitious, living in a small area that you didn't know how big the world was, etc., etc. How would you see something on this scale? Well, in 1887 there was a Yellow River flood, and nearly 2 million people were destroyed in China. We know in 1931 the China floods took out about 500,000 to 2 million. We're not clear on exactly how many. It was bad. In 1938, the Yellow River flood again, about 500,000. And East Pakistan in the Bola cyclone, about 500,000. 1935 Yangtze River flood, 145,000. In the Netherlands, St. Felix's flood, 100,000 or more. St. Lucia's flood took out 50,000 in 1287, Holy Roman Empire. About 36,000 when the North Sea flooded from a storm surge, Holy Roman Empire. 40,000 in the 1949 Guatemalan floods. And the list goes on and 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 on, which tells us what? Floodings happen. The Comanche, also Central America, have their flood myth. Just to tell you that there was issues for them as well. We know that flood myths in the Mapuche culture in Chile talk about monsters bringing great floods that destroyed the world as they knew it. So we've got a fair number of, and obviously they're all supernaturally linked, and you have the gods doing things and heroes doing things and rah-de-rah-de-rah-de-rah, but the bottom line is the floods happened worldwide. And it seems that we cannot deny this fact. Over the Andes and more, they had to retreat to highlands to avoid major floods, etc., etc., that when somebody upset the gods for some reason, everything got wiped out, which again goes to show that you should not deal with that. The Maori story. Now, the Maoris live on an island, which is not very high at all, and the story of Tauaki contains episodes where the hero causes a flood to destroy villages, and he directs his own people to relocate their village to the top of the mountain to avoid the damage. So if the sea level rose, low levels would have been seriously at risk. So again, the Maori tell of rising sea levels and a flood, which means that absolutely they have. Tahiti was destroyed by the sea. No man nor hog nor fowl nor dog survived. The groves of trees and stones were carried away by the wind. They were destroyed, and the deep was over the land. But 2 persons, a husband and a wife, were saved. When the flood came, the wife took up her young chicken, her young dog, and her kitten. The husband took up his pigs. These are the only animals that the natives really knew. And they proposed that they take refuge on Mount Orofina, the highest mountain in Tahiti. And they said, the wife said, no, but the sea will reach even that. And they had better go to Mount Opitoihoto, where they would be safe. So they went there instead, and she was right. So the lower of the mountains was covered by the sea, but the higher one wasn't. And they sat there for 10 nights till the sea ebbed, and they saw the little heads of the mountains appearing above the waves again. When the sea finally retired, the land remained without produce, without men, and the fish were putrid in the caves and the holes of the rocks. So the wind also swept away, and when all was calm, the stones and the trees began to come back from the heavens, to which they had been carried up by the wind. For all the trees of the land had been torn up and whirled aloft by the hurricane. And the woman said, we too are safe from the sea, but death or hurt comes now on these stones that are falling. Where shall we live? So they dug a hole, lined it with grass, covered it over, and they crept in and lived there until the storms finally passed. And when there was nothing left, which sounds like a meteor strike to me as well, the woman said, arise and go out. But the husband said, no, I don't want to. But he did. And humanity carried on. So nevertheless, the Maoris have a flood story, and they survived whatever particular reason that they did. Now, along with all of that, we can see then that geographically and worldwide, there are a sufficiency of flood myths to say that there were floods. And one wonders if perhaps this wasn't the last major global warming. You have your global warming, you have an ice age and the waters recede, and if it happens and we are still around after the next major global warming, because we're heading into one, maybe the seas will recede sufficiently that we will... A new phone. You did not tell me you got a new phone. That's pretty cool. Tell us about your phone, please. But basically what we're saying is, maybe if the waters do recede, we will find a heck of a lot of old buildings and ruins and stuff. We know that the Bimini Road looks exactly like a road that was built by people, but it's under the sea. Maybe at the time it was built, it was not under the sea. And that's the point. And right there we see the whole basic understanding is human memory forgets important things, such as the fact that the world does keep changing. Floods do happen. And just because I say the whole world was flooded, maybe what I mean is my whole world was flooded, which is not quite the same thing. I put it to you. So, what do you think? Give me comments. Were the flood myths history? Will one day the waters recede and we find Atlantis and maybe other places? Is there more down there? Should we stop trying to see what's in space and try and see what is down below in the waters that we think? I want to know about the new phone and whether or not it's any good. I think phones are cool. But nevertheless, but that said, we now have huge amounts of ideas based on mythology, because if, let us assume that the flood myths are true, what other stories are true, and in what way? Are the old tales actually maybe elaborated, maybe changed into more mythological style, but for a given value of it, is it possible they are all true? Could stories of the gods visiting refer to aliens visiting? Is there stuff out there that we simply don't recognize or understand? Are the jinn real? Do werewolves exist? Are we being blind to what is around us? And how spooky is the world? Maybe only the ghosts can tell us. But I, for one, would like to know more. Oh, absolutely. We know that from the fact they were developed for use in the military originally in order to make it possible to communicate better than standard radio communication. And of course, nowadays, they've turned everybody into sheeple, including me. Thank you for the like. I get nervous if I don't have my phone with me, even if it doesn't have signal, which implies that A, I have a serious problem, and B, so does everybody else. So maybe we need to rethink our understanding of phone technology. AI is definitely getting out of hand. We know that. And people are rushing forward with too much, too quick, that might result in them deciding they don't need us. Right? How do you know how sheeple we are? If we are the sheeple, we wouldn't know. Make it a project. Everybody on the channel, go and read 1984, Fahrenheit 451, and Animal Farm. Then come back and we will discuss it. That is my challenge to you. And if you've read them already, do it again. And don't cheat and watch the movies, because the movies were crap. Read the books. I dare you. They're banned in a lot of places, though. Though, you know, one of the most banned and apparently sedentary book ever was actually Catcher in the Rye, which I thought was pretty tame. Good book, very good book, but I never saw it as sedentary. I mean, if you want a modern sedentary one, Clockwork Orange. But apparently, no, Catcher in the Rye, it will lead you astray. Could be. Could be. Are we no more than AI ourselves? It's a fair question. I don't know. It's a worrying thought. I'd like to think not. Mind you, if my thoughts are from a controller, that controller is definitely on drugs. Because some of my thoughts are very, very, very weird. I'm just saying. So, yeah. My controller's cooked. Nevertheless, we have reached the end of our rather interesting look at the rising of the floods and more. And I do hope you enjoyed it. And we will go on Monday with something different and spooky and interesting. I need to find something truly terrifying to talk about. Oh yeah, no, that as well. People don't like change as much as you might think. Everybody thinks that there must be change for the better, but no, people don't like change, and that absolutely results in issues in that regard. So, yeah, there are problems with that, I'm just saying. But nevertheless, I am afraid that now I am very tired. So I am going to sneak off and go and tuck myself in Bedfordshire. So thank you. I hope you like this. We will do more. Like, share, subscribe, join the subscriptions, become a fan, do all of the good things. Yeah, but Trump's mad. Have you ever noticed that it's only mad people that make changes? I think he's great too. But he's still mad. He flies in the face of what ought to be. So, absolute madness. But is not all greatness inspired by madness? Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. We shall see. Currently, my current thought is that 90% of world politics has completely lost its head, and they've forgotten the point of politics. Politicians are not there to protect anybody or to even run a country. It's a total stuff up, and I'm not even talking about like third world countries who by and large are still at least trying. No, I'm talking about the first world. It's beyond insanity the way that things are going in Britain at the moment, where they're protecting people who are committing major crimes because, no, but shame, they're refugees. I don't give a shit who you are. If you commit a major crime, you take the punishment for it. I don't care who you are. There are laws for a reason, end of story and finish. We're there to protect the people of the country, and if we don't do that, you have failed. Rule of law is falling apart. People have forgotten duty. It's all about me, rights. It's crazy. World over. They're all mad. Trump is right. He's mad, but he's right, and he should be mad. But that's another story entirely. I cannot change the world. I can barely change me. But with all of that said, and before I get ranty, I shall bid you all good night. Sleep sweet, sleep deep, but sleep with one eye open, because it seems that there are many things out there that go bump in the night, and the myths that we tell are more real than story. And you never know. They may go bump for you. Good night.